Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, Text 29. Bhoktaram yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Bhoktaram yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Bhoktaram yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Prabhu, please.
Bhoktaram yajna tapasam
Bhoktaram yajnatapasam
Sarvaloka Maheshwaram
Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati.
Bhoktaram yajnatapasam
Bhoktaram yajnatapasam
Sarvaloka Maheshwaram
Sarvaloka Maheshwaram
Suridam
Suridam
Sarvabhutanam
Sarvabhutanam
Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati.
Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Mothers. Bhoktaram yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Bhoktaram yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vichati. Please repeat the synonyms. Bhoktaram, the beneficiary. Yajna, of sacrifices. Tapasam, and penances and austerities. Sarvaloka, of all planets and the demigods thereof. Mahaishwaram, the Supreme Lord. Suridam, the benefactor. Sarva, of all. Bhutanam, the living entities. Gyatva, thus knowing. Mam, me, Lord Krishna. Shanti, relief from material pangs. Vichati, one achieves. Translation, please repeat after me. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Please hear the purport. The conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world. But they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because He is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than He. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvatra Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey. But actually, they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of the material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of the material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are His subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. The 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute. And the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya. And that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter. For it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial to anyone, toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurapishe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. We welcome all of you, all devotees, to today evening's discussion on the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And we have been discussing the 5th chapter for the last few weeks or probably months, maybe a couple of months now. And today we have the opportunity to discuss the last verse of this beautiful chapter. Bhoktaram yajyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shanti vrichati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all the planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So in the past few weeks, or rather few sessions when we have been going through this chapter is titled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. And in this chapter we have heard in the last week Gopalak Prabhu, and the week before that I think Brajahari Prabhu, and so many devotees have shared their beautiful realizations which will definitely help us to understand or rather discuss the last verse of this chapter. This last verse of the chapter is very instructive and is sort of a summary verse of this chapter, and it's one of the beautiful verses, so many verses that we find in Bhagavad Gita. So just to have a background, in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is also titled as Karma Yoga, the third chapter is also titled as Karma Yoga. In that chapter, Lord Krishna instructs Arjuna, and he says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yuddhasva vigata jvara. So he instructs him, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma, means you surrender all your activities unto me. And of course he says, give up your lethargy and fight. Yeah? So he tells him to surrender his work, his actions. So we find that in the beginning of the 5th chapter, Arjuna, for the benefit of all of us, is in a little doubt. He asks the Lord as to which is better. Is it better to renounce all the work, or is it better to work in devotion? And in one of the very initial verses of this chapter, the Lord unequivocally tells Arjuna that work in devotion is better than renouncing work. Renouncing work is also good for developing your spiritual life, but work in devotion, which is devotional service or karma yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. So this chapter is actually setting the scene for devotional service. And that is the difference between the 5th and the 3rd chapter, although both the titles are similar. But this title has action in Krishna consciousness. So there is some action involved. So you have to do something. Yeah? So to understand this chapter and to understand this particular beautiful verse, we must first understand the current situation that we are in is a situation which is full of anxieties, a situation which is full of miseries, a situation which is full of so many disturbances. And in this particular day and age that we are in, which of course I am sure all of us know and all of us understand, is called as Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto of Bhagavatam, is described as Prayen Alpayishas Sabhya Kalau Asmin Yuge Jana Mandaha Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagyahi Upadata. So here the very basic qualities of this current life that we are living are very nicely explained in simple words. So in Kali Yuga, our life is very short. Even if we talk about increasing life expectancy according to sciences, according to medical sciences, frankly, very few of us will ever reach the age of 100. Yeah, so we hardly would reach maybe 50, maybe less, maybe more, maybe 60, maybe 80. So in today's day and age, we have a very short life. This is a very short, and we don't have much time, frankly. And in addition to that, it describes that most of us will be dull-headed. I mean, this is a general statement from Bhagavatam, but we must understand that compared to the previous yugas where people were extremely intelligent, they could just memorize the scriptures just by hearing them once. You can imagine that Parikshit Maharaj was sitting in front of Shukdev Goswami, and Shukdev Goswami was just reciting the Bhagavatam. So many verses, 18,000 verses. And these verses were just heard by Parikshit Maharaj. There is no text. We have a textbook in front of us. And they could assimilate everything. That was the kind of intelligence. So in today's day and age, we are dull-headed, and very often we may speak something, and then when we just walk out of the center, we may just forget what we spoke. That is the common experience because there are so many distractions. So the first thing is we'll be dull-headed, there will be troubles, there will be disturbances, quarrelsome, will be quarrelsome. And the end of this verse, the translation of the verse is important. Above all, we will be always disturbed. So I'm sure if each of us look into our daily lives, there is enough to trouble us throughout the day. Only when we are sitting here, we probably feel a little peaceful for this 1 hour, 2 hours that we are in a temple in front of the Lord. Otherwise, there are so many disturbances in our life, and these are the anxieties that we face throughout life. Now, why do we face these anxieties? Bhagavad Gita tells us, and that this is when Lord has instructed Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, and in the 8th chapter he says, this is Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. So Dukkhalayam means a place which is full of miseries, full of anxieties. But the good thing is, it is ashashvat, it is temporary. So if we learn to tolerate and we channel our energies towards devotional life, then we might be able to tolerate all these miseries that are around us. Yeah? So Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. And these miseries are not just what we see in front of us, around us in the society. Lord has instructed Arjun that Abrahma Bhuvanal Loka Punaravartino Arjuna, which means right from the lowest planet in this material creation to Brahmalok. Brahmalok is a place where there is so much of comfort compared to the earthly planets. All these places are part of material existence, and everywhere there are miseries. To a less extent or to a more extent. But miseries don't heal us. And what are these anxieties? Frankly, we as we all can see in our lives, we often hanker for what we don't have. So we are anxious for what we don't have. And we are anxious for losing what we have. So this can describe the sum and substance of our life. That every time, if we don't have something, we are anxious to attain it, and if we have something, we are anxious that we might lose it. We always remember quite some time ago, many years ago, when we were hoping to have a child. I remember Devkinandan Prabhu had instructed us. He told us, remember that even if you have a child or you don't have a child, you are going to have anxieties. So don't think that the child is going to solve your anxieties. So very often in life, when we see something as a sign of achieving a certain level in life because of the various conditionings, we feel that every next step is going to give me freedom from anxiety. And I'm sure all those of you who have children know that the anxieties faced by parents are no less than somebody who is really wanting to have a child. So the anxiety never goes away. Yeah? And these are just anxieties that we see all around us. But what are the key miseries? What are the main miseries that we are facing? And the miseries that we really face in our life are Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshana. So Janma is birth, old age, disease and death. Birth, I think, is a very interesting part of our life, because most of us have forgotten how we were born. We don't remember the pains we went through, and we don't remember what anxieties we went through, but the scriptures tell us, Bhagavatam tells us, that when the child is in the womb of the mother, the child is very miserable. It's a very miserable state, and the child is actually repenting. He's saying that I've been put in this very difficult position because of my past actions. Because I did something, I've got this body now, and I'm repenting for it. But, oh Lord, I promise you I'll not forget you. So that's what the child is praying in the womb. And in the womb, from a medical standpoint, the child is in water, he's not in air. He's surrounded by water. He's drinking water, he's eating water, so it's just water all around. It's the fluid, right? So at the time of the birth, it's not only the mother that is so anxious, it's also the child that goes through immense anxiety. And even based on medical science, childbirth is one of the very critical few minutes when the child is born. Because it has to transition from a phase where it's surrounded by fluid to a phase where suddenly it has to start breathing air. So as soon as the child is born, it has to forget the fluid and start breathing air. And this process of birth is extremely traumatic. Now, of course, from a material perspective, when the child is born, very often we are satisfied when the child starts crying. We are very happy that the child is crying. But no one knows why the child is crying. The child may be crying because he is suffering. He has gone through too much. And then it comes out. And then suddenly he is, in a very different environment. And after the child is, just opens his eyes, he sees, the vision is not very good at that time, just after birth, so the child can hardly see the faces of his parents, maybe the nurse, maybe somebody around him, 1 meter, 2 meters, not more than that. But as soon as he sees the world around him, he forgets what he prayed for in the womb. Because the illusion around him becomes reality. And immediately he starts identifying with that body. And then that body gets a name. And that body gets a father, a mother, an uncle, aunt, extended family, society, country. And then the child's identity develops based on that temporary situation. Which is of course temporary. It is temporary because it is only limited for that life. So this is the anxiety of birth. What do we know about death? Death is very often not a topic to be discussed too much in detail, but death is of course one of the most anxious moments in one's life. It is a very intense moment, and from what we hear from scriptures, it is not only a lot of suffering, but the anxiety of losing whatever you have accumulated over your life. Your family, your relatives, your home, your everything will just disappear in a moment's time. Everything will just vanish. So that's the anxiety of death. What's the anxiety of Jara? Jara is old age. Old age, when we are very young, in the very young years of life, we very often think we'll never get old. We see our parents, we see our elderly, grandmothers, grandfathers, but we never think that we will get old, right? But gradually, every 10 years, you start realizing the changes in your body, and then you realize that you are approaching the same process, and everybody will approach this process as you go through your life, right? Even if you externally cover yourself with cosmetics, you go for surgeries, you go for various things, internally your aging will continue. It cannot stop. So aging is another anxiety. You will lose memory, your body will become weak, you will not be able to do the things that you can. And so these are big anxieties for many. And of course, disease. Now, disease also is something interesting. Some of us may not be suffering at this point, but we must always remember that when somebody is suffering, we must remember that we also will suffer for sure at a certain point. The suffering may vary in terms of intensity, in terms of duration, in terms of the type, but suffering will also be universal. And the most instructive thing is what Yudhishthira Maharaj had mentioned, is that we see all of this happening around us. Every day we see birth, old age, disease, death. But we always think that we are aloof from it. We always think that we don't suffer from it. So that's the biggest, it's the most surprising thing, that every individual somewhere in the heart feels that he will never go through it. But you can't escape this, and this cycle keeps continuing life after life, based on what we hear from the scriptures, right? So there is life after life. So this continues. Now these anxieties that we talked about, and these, what is the cause? Why do we get these sufferings? Why do we get these anxieties? And the very basis of these anxieties is described to us again by Srimad Bhagavatam. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 5th canto, we hear from Rishabdev when he is instructing his sons. He says, Pumsa Sriyamitu Vibhavametad Tayor Vidhoridaya Grantimahu Ato Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitte Janasya Moho Yamaham Mameti So the last two lines are related to what we are describing. In this world, because of lust, there is attachment to the family, to the house, to everything related to the family, to everything related to me and mine. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. So the illusion, moha, illusion is aham, mameti, I and mine. Everything around us is basically an expansion of I and mine. It may be a very localized self-interest. We might be just talking about my home, or it may be an extended self-interest, my society, my school, my nation. So everywhere it is related to me. So it starts with identifying with the body. And this identification with the body is because we have identified with, we are in contact with matter. So as soon as we are individual spirit souls, and as soon as we forget our real identity and we come in contact with matter, we forget our real identity, and then we start material activities which we get attached to. And that is the cause of this illusion and also the cause of these material miseries that we come across. Of course, material miseries we talked about, and each and every one of us, I'm sure, wants to get rid of these miseries. We are every day, frankly, the purpose of our life, the goal of our life is to have happiness. That is the only goal we are living for, frankly. Besides, of course, from a spiritual perspective, when we are blessed with some association of pure devotees, we may start thinking of changing our purpose of life. But most of us are always just living for happiness. And that happiness is basically we're living for peace. We want peace from these miseries. We want to get rid of problems. But is it possible to get rid of these problems? We talked about them a little earlier. Prahlad Maharaj in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, 7th chapter, 42nd verse, he says, Dukhaya, Sukhaya Dukha Mokshaya Sankalpa Iha Karmina Tadatnotihaya Dukham Anihaya Sukha Dukha. He says that every living entity is hankering for happiness, is working towards happiness. But as soon as you start working for happiness, your conditions of miseries begin. The actual happiness is only then when you stop endeavoring for happiness. So, if you stop endeavoring to be happy or to solve these anxieties and channel your energies towards satisfying the Lord, that is when you will really get freedom from these anxieties. As long as you try to be happy, you will never be happy. So how do we know this? In our daily lives, we come across situations in workplace or wherever we work. Very often we see a situation where there is law. You work very hard through the day, and you are probably so much disturbances. Your boss might have chastised you, or your colleagues might have cheated you, or somebody has stabbed you in the back, or somebody has you have so many problems. And then end of the day, you want to get rid of the problems. What's the easiest solution most would do? Is to go and binge. Yeah, binge. Binge is to go and drink, binge. Intoxication. Now, of course, the intoxication gives relief because it makes you forget what happened during the day. Right? So very often that becomes a habit, and it's very common in today's day and age. It's a social norm, rather. It's very uncommon to see an individual who won't binge or who won't get into these habits. And what is the purpose of this intoxication? Is to forget what happened during the day. And then you feel as if you have sorted your problems, you are the controller, and then when the next day comes, you are even more miserable. Why? Because you come back to the office and everything is the same. Nothing has changed. Your boss is the same, your colleagues are the same, you are still being stabbed, you are still being chastised, and of course you are also suffering because your health is suffering because of you getting intoxicated. Right? So none, this is just an example, but none of the material solutions can take care of material miseries. This is what we have to understand. Material solutions do not take care of material miseries. That is the basis we have to understand. So basically there is a lack of peace. We find that we don't have peace in this world. We find that everything is, there are so many disturbances. What should we do if the material happiness does not, solve our miseries? How should we tackle this? Right? So we are told that, in the towards the end of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord tells Arjuna, Apuryamanam achalam pratishtham samudramapam pravishanti yadva tadvat kamaya pravishanti sarve sa shanti apnoti na kam kam. So again the word shanti comes here, peace. Yeah? And who gets peace? Not a person who is trying to satisfy his desires, but a person who remains undisturbed by the incessant flow of desires. And in the next verse, the Lord also tells Arjuna that one who gives up false ego and who does not have false proprietorship, which actually means that he knows that the Lord is the supreme proprietor. If you know that the Lord is the supreme benefactor, the Lord is the supreme proprietor, and you know that you are not the supreme proprietor, so that is the beginning of the understanding to become peaceful. Yeah, so that is the peace. And this particular verse, 5.29, Prabhupada has so nicely explained, it's actually called as the formula for peace. This verse is called as the formula for peace because this verse contains everything that is required for individual peace and collective peace. If you want everything to be peaceful in the world, the only thing you need to know is that the Lord is supreme. He is the supreme benefactor. He is the one who is the enjoyer of all the sacrifices and austerities, and He is the best well-wisher. If you know this in your heart and you keep it as a firm belief, this is the solution for peace. Because then all your activities will be dovetailed such that the Lord is satisfied. Right? So again, we know that the supreme occupation of any living entity, as described in the Bhagavatam, is Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Adhokshage. So Bhakti to Adhokshage. Adhokshage is the name of the Lord. So loving devotional service to the Lord, which is uninterrupted and unmotivated. So there should be no motivation, and it should be a constant endeavor. Unmotivated, uninterrupted devotion is what will satisfy the self, right? Which will give you peace, right? So we were talking about, devotion. And what is this devotion actually? How do we know what is actually bhakti? Sometimes this, little question comes in our mind. And Rupa Goswami has very nicely explained the definition of bhakti. And the definition of bhakti is very simple according to Rupa Goswami. Sarva upadhi vinirmuktam, which means you must keep aside all your material designations. Sarva upadhi. Material designations are, of course, your profession. You may be a lawyer, you may be an engineer, you may be a doctor, you may be a boss, you may be a CEO, you may be a president. You have to keep your material designations aside. Sarva upadhi vinirmuktam. It also includes our designations as man, woman, child, adult, old person. These are all material designations. So you have to keep them aside. Sarva upadhi vinirmuktam tat padatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So you have to use your senses to serve the master of senses. Who is the master of senses? Rishikesh. And if you engage all your senses in the service of the master of the senses, that is the definition of bhakti. So it's very easy to then, understand how every activity can be dovetailed into an activity that actually pleases the Lord. And we may not be able to do it ourselves always, but we have excellent examples around us in the congregation. So when we look at devotees who are so dedicated, who are completely fixed in their service for the Lord, that gives us inspiration to try and improve. But as long as we at least try, I think that effort is worth it. So that is called as bhakti. Now, we talked about bhakti, we talked about what is devotion. Yeah, but we must also understand that here in the second part of the purport, Prabhupada has mentioned about the various processes of yoga, right? So this is always a little confusing, sometimes difficult to understand, and even I must admit I am also learning from devotees who are able to share, your devotees to share their realizations. But from what I can share, maybe, is this process of yoga or the process of connecting with the Supreme has certain stages to it. And these stages, we must understand briefly to understand why has Prabhupada mentioned that Bhakti Yoga is the Supreme. Yeah? Why is that? So I can give an example to try to understand this. For example, if I myself, I am addicted to gulab jamuns. Yeah? Gulab jamuns, I am sure all of you have had gulab jamuns. So if I am addicted to gulab jamuns and I can't control myself, I eat 20, 40 gulab jamuns at one meal. What will happen? I may enjoy it for 1 or 2 meals, 3 meals. Eventually, my health will suffer, right? Because I'm not meant to eat so much, right? So I decide I want to improve myself, right? So I want to improve myself. So what I do is, instead of eating 40, I decide I will regulate myself. So I say I will eat 10, right? So that is called as regulating my activities, and this is called as karma kanda. Karma kanda is regulating your sense gratification. So you have some rules and you regulate based on the scriptures. You don't exceed, you regulate. This is the first step. What is the next step? If I am still attached to the gulab jamun, I can't forget it. I always think about it. I'm always attached to it. But then, despite being attached, now I am just trying to reduce my count from 10 further to 2, maybe, right? So I think 2 is okay for me, right? So that is called as sakama karma yoga. Sakama is where you are attached to the fruits of your action. Which means you cook the gulab jamun, you make it, but while making, you are always thinking of eating the gulab jamun. You are thinking that this is for me, and I am going to enjoy it at the end. But I am going to just take 2. I am very good. I am excellent. I am not uncontrolled. I can control myself. I am taking 2. Right? So I am happy that my health is taken care of. I am also happy I am getting gulab jamuns. Right? So this is sakama karma yoga. Sakama means being attached to the fruit. A little higher than this is called as nishkama karma yoga. Nishkama karma yoga is where I am not attached to the fruit. So I am making the gulab jamun, but I am not thinking about it, right? It's a little subtle to understand, but I am making it, but I am not thinking about it, but I am still eating it, right? So these are subtle changes. So I am progressing. So the next time I make the gulab jamun, I make it, but I don't think about, I am not attached to it. So I make it, I distribute to my friends, and if nothing is left at the end of that event, I am not sad, because I am not attached to the gulab jamun. Right? If I don't get it, it's okay. If I get it, it's okay. If the gulab jamun is not sweet enough, it's okay. If it is too sweet, it's okay. So that is nishkama karma yoga. Right? These are material examples. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm just trying to make it simple for myself as well. After this comes the stage of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is a stage where you want to know how is this gulab jamun, how does it, who has, given the entire energy to create this, right? Then you start speculating. And you start thinking, where did the flour come from? Where did the milk come from? Where did the sugar come from? And then you go, oh, who is the creator of the plant that made the sugar? Who is the creator of the cow that gave the milk? And so you analyze and you reach to the stage of what is called as Brahman realization. That is called as Jnana Yoga. Beyond Jnana Yoga is Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is the process that Prabhupada has described towards the end of the purport. Is where you do these eightfold activities, yam, niyam and all that, yeah, until samadhi. And this is a stage where you are completely in meditation. You are meditating on the Lord in the form of Paramatma, who is inside everyone's heart. So the Lord is inside everyone's heart as the super soul, the Paramatma. That is one of the manifestations of the Lord. And we know this from Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter. It tells us, Upadrishta Anumanta Cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatmeti Chapiyukto Dehesmi Purusha Para. Right? So this is describing the Paramatma. Paramatma is one, he is the overseer and he is the permitter. He oversees our activities, he permits our activities, but he is the enjoyer. Bharta Bhokta. He is the enjoyer, right? Not our individual soul. He is the enjoyer. So Ashtanga Yoga is to realize that the Paramatma is the enjoyer, right? So you meditate on the Paramatma. So you have given attachment for the Gulab Jamun, you made the Gulab Jamun, and you are meditating in a way with the mind thinking that this Gulab Jamun has manifested from the Lord's creation. It is not because of my activity. That is Ashtanga Yoga, right? But where is Bhakti Yoga? Bhakti Yoga is on the top. Why is Bhakti Yoga on the top? Bhakti Yoga is a situation where when you start the process of cooking the Gulab Jamun, you have already decided that this Gulab Jamun is to satisfy the Lord. It is not, you are not thinking of who made the Gulab Jamun, where the Gulab Jamun came from, because you already know it. You don't have to go and think who is the creator of the cow, because you know it. So what you are trying to do is now, you are trying to satisfy the Lord instead of satisfying yourself. And you are satisfying the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Bhagavan. So in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is Bhagavan Uvacha. Yeah, so that is the final understanding of the Lord's so Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So we do understand these are various aspects of how an individual can approach God, right? But the Bhagavan realization is the highest, because that is where you can have personal reciprocation with the Lord. You can offer your Gulab Jamun, right? So you can actually make it, you can keep it on a plate and offer it to the Lord, right? So that process is only possible with Bhakti Yoga, right? So that's why in the purport, Prabhupada has clearly mentioned that Bhakti Yoga serves the ultimate purpose, and that's why it's the highest, right? So this is what we heard about Bhakti Yoga. Now, the initial translation of this verse told us that three things. A person in full consciousness of me, right, of the Lord. Who is in full consciousness of the Lord? Full consciousness of the Lord is a pure devotee who is fully engaged, always thinking about the Lord and always trying to please the Lord, right? So he is a truly Krishna conscious person is described here. He is in full consciousness of the Lord, right? He is fully conscious. And what is he conscious about? He is conscious that the Lord is the Supreme Personality of God. Lord is Bhagavan. He is conscious about the Lord being the ultimate beneficiary of all the sacrifices, penances, austerities. All the fasting and all the things that you do to your body to try to please the Lord, eventually, even if you are doing it for any devata, it eventually is to please the Supreme Lord. So we must understand that, right? Then we also must understand that He is everyone's well-wisher, right? So how do we understand He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? We take information from all the scriptures. Lord Brahma in his prayer says, which is that prayer, Brahma Samhita, the first prayer. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadi, Adi, Govinda, Sarva Karana Karana. So these two lines can tell you the definition, who is supreme. Sarva Karana Karana. He is the cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karana. So this is the first prayer in Brahma Samhita where Lord Brahma is saying that, O Govinda, O Lord, you are the cause of all causes. So when Lord Brahma has already certified, there is no need for us to speculate and start thinking, oh, is it like this, is it not like this, why is it like this, who is this? There is no need because it's already, He has told us, right? And He is also the controller and maintainer of all living and non-living things in this entire creation. So we, from Ishopnishad is one of the Upanishads, and we look at the first verse of the Ishopnishad, which is also invocation. Isha Vasam Idam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Kena Kattena Bhunjita Ma Kasya Svit Dhanam. So this verse also tells us that the Lord is actually, He is not only the maintainer, He is everything. He is creator, maintainer of all animate and inanimate. So everything, living and non-living. So these two verses sort of seal the truth that, He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Then we talked about He being the ultimate beneficiary. How do we know He is the ultimate beneficiary of sacrifices and everything that's done? The Lord, I think in the 9th chapter, the Lord says, I think there's a verse where the Lord, let me just pull out. It's 9.29 actually. I missed the verse right now, but what the verse really tells us is that the Lord is, He declares that He is let me pull out from here, it will be easier. Nowadays it's the most confidential knowledge. Oh, yeah. So this verse actually tells us, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priya ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahi te teshu chapya. So what does he say? That I am equal to everyone. I don't envy anyone. Right? So this aspect of the Lord shows us that He is the ultimate well-wisher of everyone. And this is because He is not partial to anyone. He is not partial to those who are sitting here and those who don't come into the temple. Right? He is not partial to even to individuals who don't believe in Him. He is not partial. He is always there as a well-wisher, overseer and permitter, and He always wants you to turn towards Him. But as soon as you turn towards Him, He has His special mercy. So this verse tells us, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priya. And the next two lines tell us, what is the next two lines? Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya. So such a person who devotes his life to me, such a person is in me and I am in him. So this is special mercy. So they say that Lord is not partial, but He offers special mercy once you surrender your life to Him. And this is very evident when you see devotees who have surrendered their life to the Lord. You see they are peaceful, they are not anxious, they are not disturbed, they are not affected by these qualities of Kali that we see. You can very nicely make out devotees who are on that platform, who can, with their real life, they can show you that they are not in anxiety. Why they are not in anxiety? Because they understand that He is supreme and He is the ultimate benefactor of all sacrifices and He is the well-wisher. Right? So this pure devotion is a platform which is of course higher. The level has gone a little bit higher. We talked about what is devotion. But Rupa Goswami also tells us what is pure devotion. And what is pure devotion? In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami tells us, Anya Bhilashita Shunyam means Anya Bhilash, no desire, no material desire. It's a very difficult stage, so you don't have any material desires. Anya Bhilashita Shunyam, no desires. Jnana Karmadi Anavritam means you are not touched by speculative knowledge or material activities. Jnana Karma. Jnana Karmadi Anavritam is covering. You are not covered by all this. Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam Bhaktir Uttamam. Anukulyena means when you are in a situation and you do actions which are favorable for devotional service. You do every activity the purpose of which is only to please the Lord. This is pure devotion. This is very good to know, and we must aspire for this, and we should look at examples around us, devotees who give us those living examples, to try to emulate them and to try to inch little by little on our journey. So that endeavor is extremely important. So now that we have understood what is, how do we achieve peace, we have understood that this process can give us real peace from anxieties. But in practical life, we are in a very difficult situation right now. This practical life is, of course, as we talked about Kali Yuga. But Kali Yuga is very special because in Bhagavatam it is mentioned, Shuddha Goswami says, Kale dosha nidhe rajan, asti hi eka mahan guna. So Kali Yuga is full of faults. There are only problems. There is nothing good about this, And this is going to get worse. We can see it. I mean, the years that we grew up were so much different from what our children are going through. And the kind of distractions, the kind of problems, the kind of things that are coming up, every 10 years things are changing. So this is going to just get worse. It's not going to get better, definitely. Whoever becomes the president of the country, whatever happens, prime minister changes, nothing is going to change. Kale dosha nidhe raja. Kali is full of faults. Asti hi eka mahan guna. A very important blessing is there in Kali Yuga. What is that blessing? Kirtanad eva Krishnasya mukta sangha param bhava. The only blessing is if you chant and glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Kirtanat eva Krishnasya. It is absolutely clear, black and white, right? So if you glorify the Lord with this understanding, then this is a blessing for you. Then all of these problems around you will not disappear. You will see them, you will suffer, you will face them, you may have to go through them, but you will learn to tolerate them. And while tolerating them, you will progress. So that is the understanding. And we also know the summary verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has always, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita is given as Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. Kalau Nasti Eva, Nasti Eva, Nasti Eva, Gatir Annatha. So, in this stage of Kali, Hare Nama has been repeated 3 times. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. Kevalam means this is the only solution. Why is it the only solution? Because those processes that we talked about of understanding how the gulab jamun, the taste of the gulab jamun, all that, they are very difficult in this short lifespan. Right? In the short lifespan of 100 years or even less than 100 years, if you are addicted to gulab jamun, it is almost impossible to reach a stage where you are not attached to the gulab jamun. Even if you stop eating the gulab jamun, the taste of the gulab jamun remains in your mind. And as long as the taste remains, you are considered as attached. So Bhagavad Gita tells us that even if you have taste for a certain activity, you are attached. You may not do it, but you have taste. So looking at my own self, I can tell you that I cannot get rid of the taste for a certain thing, right? Taste for gulab jamun. I cannot. It's very difficult. So these processes were there in the past yugas, Like Satya Yoga, people would sit for meditation for thousands of years. So you have examples in Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma also was meditating for 1,000 celestial years. He was meditating for a long time, right? That was possible. Then in the Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga. In the Treta Yuga, it was sacrifices, right? You do sacrifices, huge sacrifices, which brought a lot of spiritual credit, right? It's not possible in today's day and age. Then in the Dwapar Yuga, there was deity worship. Deity worship in a certain standard, right? I mean, right now, we are making efforts to lovingly serve the lordships, but deity worship standards are extremely high. Deity worship standards in those days were extremely high. And the individuals who had to qualify to do deity worship had to be really good, right? So deity worship had those results in those yugas. In this day and age, the only process that is practically possible is Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. Kalau Nasti Eva. Kalau is Kali Yuga. Nasti Eva. Gatir Anyatha. There is no other process. Right? So these are quite instructive statements, and that then brings us to the final, understanding of this verse, to how to attain peace in today's day and age. So with this, I will stop today's discussion. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask, and we can try to discuss. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions, any comments, any realizations from senior devotees? Any things that you would like to share with your daily experiences, daily life related to this verse? So this verse actually is theoretically very easy to understand, but to apply practically is very difficult, because all of us in our daily life think that we are the controllers. As Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in the purport, that we always want to lord it over the nature. We always feel that we are the center of our lives. Everything in the life around us is centered around your own self. So to give up this mentality and to get out of this mentality on a practical platform is extremely difficult. And for that same reason, it is important for us to always hanker for the association of pure devotees and continue with our process or journey in devotional service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. If there are no other questions or comments, we will now stop here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. So we will now chant one round on the Japamala. So please, you can get your beads and then you can chant for the pleasure of the Lord. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta.
You can rise now for all.
Jiva Jayo Jayo Gaurachande Aratika Shobha
जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतनाम अभय चरणारविंद स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतनाम भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। गंगामयी यमुनामयी की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Guru. Hare Krishna Prabhus and Matatis. We have few announcements before we conclude today's evening's program. All right, I think we will do the aarti. I skipped, I think we will do the aarti and then I will make the final announcement.
Namaste Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we have a few announcements before we end today's program. This Thursday we have the first festival of this year, Nityanand Trayodashi. Nityanand Trayodashi ki jai. So there will be an evening program on Thursday at the center, and as usual there will be you will be receiving an email and you will have to register for the program. So because of limitations, I think only not everyone might be able to attend, but you can always also join online if you are not able to attend. Yeah. And then on Saturday, this Saturday is also a very auspicious day. It's the appearance of Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur is one of the very exalted acharyas in our parampara, and this Saturday we will be celebrating his appearance day in the evening as the Saturday evening program with kirtans and prayers from Narottam Das. So please join us if you can. And then tomorrow, as usual, we have our Bhagavatam class in the morning, and the Bhagavatam class will be the next verse of the 3rd canto, 7th chapter, 21st verse. His Grace Balakrishna Prabhu will be taking the class. So for those of you who have registered, please join and come for the program. And Krishna will see you next program, maybe on Thursday. Hare Krishna.